This program has been made possible in part by the following sponsors. The Trial Lawyers Association of BC. The Vancouver Courier newspaper. My new book about addictions, All the Way Home, Building Recovery That Works. ACORN is a national program, a nonprofit society that basically is an advocacy group for the poor and disenfranchised. And we're delighted to have Monica Rosina from ACORN with us today. And of course, all of you know BC Fed, BC Federation of Labor, which represents over 500,000 workers and often, in truth, represents people who are not unionized. So it's quite an organization. And we're delighted to welcome the relatively new president after 15 years of the great work of Jim Sinclair. We get Irene Lanzinger, formerly the president of BC Teachers Fed.
That's right.
My goodness. But you were working with Jim for a while, were you not?
I was. I was the secretary-treasurer with Jim for 4 years.
Oh, dynamite, dynamite. So you're surviving this new role?
Yes, it's busy. It's very busy.
Yeah.
Fighting for workers' rights and representing 500,000 members,
Wow.
but it's great work.
Absolutely. Okay, so Monica, if I may, I want to turn to you first because we want to talk about a number of things in this half hour, but let's start with clawing back the clawback. Just explain for everybody what the clawback was.
Okay, what it was is if a person is on income assistance or disability and they have children,
yes,
and they take the father to court.
Yes.
Actually, they're mandated to take the father to court.
Yes.
To get child support for their children.
Okay.
The judge will look at everything and order, a certain amount of money, say $300 a month,
yes.
$400 a month.
Yes.
And once it's ordered, when the parent receives this $300 or $400, immediately it's taken off their disability check or their income assistance check.
Because the government was saying, we're already giving you money, so we're not going to give you more.
Yeah, we're going to claw it back from you.
Ouch.
So what, and this has been going on for like over 30 years.
Yes.
What happened was ACORN, we're just an organization of members who come together that have issues. We're driven by what our membership wants to work on. And this was raised over and over again. So we had good organization of single mothers come together and on disability. And we had 11 actions over 18 months, like media actions, where we called on the government to stop this climb back, that the judge orders this income is needed for those children.
Yes.
And the government shouldn't be in the position to take it back from them.
A lot of knocking on doors, a lot of phone calls, a lot of one-to-one, yes?
Yes.
Good for you.
Getting people out and then a lot of media actions.
That's all the basics of community organization.
Yes.
Yeah, of community action. It's difficult, it's often tedious, but it's necessary.
It's necessary, and we're so happy. Like, this is a huge accomplishment.
Yes.
For this.
Yeah, I congratulate you. I think it's wonderful.
Yeah.
It's not often that we can convince a sitting government at any level to change their minds about something.
No, it's not.
Yeah. What did they say it cost them to do this? 31 million or something?
Is it 21 million?
21 million?
I think when they brought out in the budget.
Yes.
Oh, I had cards over there. But
Doesn't matter.
But it's something like 21 million.
Okay. Okay.
Well, 21,000 families will benefit from this.
Still, for someone with disabilities and children, it's still a tough go.
It's still a tough go, and even to even it out a bit,
yes,
I wish that we have also lobbied for them to increase the disability rates and increase the income assistance rates, because although we're delirious that we've got this action. I would like to see it even a bit for the other parents that aren't able to get the child support and are still living at 2007 rates of income. Like, for example, First, I looked, the average two-bedroom apartment in the Vancouver area is $1,200 a month.
Do you know what a two-bedroom apartment on my street is?
No.
I live near, I won't say specifically, but near 12th and Granville. Okay, there's a flat for rent 4 buildings away from me, $2,200 a month. It's a 60-year-old building, Monica.
Oh, my God.
It's outrageous.
It is outrageous.
And what does the provincial government give them on income assistance for shelter? They give them, for 3 people, $660 a month. For 4 people, $700 a month for shelter. That's including your rent, your hydro, your heat, everything. And they give you $400 for support money.
Every
so
food
your
item,
total check is less than what the average rent is.
And every food item on the table today costs more than it did a year ago. I just stopped in up the street from here and got some honey and crunchy peanut butter, 2 of my faves, right? Close to $20 for honey and peanut butter. Are you kidding me?
It's crazy.
Yeah. So what do you say, Monica, to the people who are not very sympathetic to causes like yours, to say, well, you know, what do you want, the government to take care of you entirely?
No, I would say that, you know, first there's a shaming. If you're a single mom, you must be, you know, an alcoholic or a drug addict or something. Yes. Most of them single parents are single parents because the father has neglected his duties and the marriage has fallen apart and they've walked away. You know, the common person is an average person. And so suddenly, you would be respectable staying at home with your children if your husband had a good job.
Yes.
If you stayed home with your children now and you're on income assistance, you're now a welfare bum. So it's the whole perceptive, it's discrimination. But what happens is the ministry says too, if your child is 3 years old, you need to go get a job. And we're not plug-in education anymore. Right? They're not paying for education anymore. Right. So you go get a minimum wage job for $10.25 an hour, and you're now, well, you'll give the statistics, it's way below 30% below the poverty level, you know, to raise your children, and you're worse off because you have work expenses. We're going to take your medical and your prescriptions and everything away from your family too. You know, so. And in the meantime, Monica, there's nothing more soul-destroying on earth than poverty. There's nothing more soul-destroying than not being able to pay the bills and put lettuce on the table. That's right. And our ACORN members, like, I would say half of them are in this category where they've come out to fight for their rights, which is what we've learned. You know, we have to unite and we have to come out and fight for things that we need. Good for you. Good for you. And not to be put in that position where we're down. Like, I'm a single parent myself. Yes. And so I've seen all this discrimination. I worked for 20 years as a family counselor in home with the ministry's clients. Dynamite. So I've seen the effect on people, and those are the same people coming out to our meetings. Yes. You know, and the same people getting these minimum wage jobs. Like, okay, we're going to talk about minimum wage. Before we do, Irene Lanzinger from BC Fed, let's get you into this conversation. Was the Fed involved in this push to claw back the clawback? Yeah, our Women's Committee was involved in that issue, and we did some work on it as well, and we were, you know, partners with a number of groups in supporting those campaigns, and certainly supported ending the clawback. Yeah, it was a great triumph, I thought. It got very little. It got a small amount of press attention, but I thought it should have been front page stuff. Yeah. Yeah. So let's talk. We're going to spend quite a bit of time maybe on this issue, but just before we go to break, let's talk about minimum wage. Sinclair was triumphant in getting us up to 10 1/4. That's right. But even he said in his farewell comments on TV that he was pleased with that, but it's not the 15 that we need. That's right. So how do you rationalize to the business community the $15 that you're looking for? Well, the first thing I would say is that we got to 10.25 30 months ago.
Yes.
It's actually been 30 months since there's been an increase in
You know, I didn't realize that. That's a while.
It's almost 3 years.
Yes.
And so people forget that it's been quite a long time since we raised the minimum wage. And just as we've been talking about, and Monica's been talking about, everything goes up.
Yes.
Welfare rates haven't gone up in 8 years, and the minimum wage hasn't gone up in 3 years.
Yes.
Both of those things have a huge impact on people who live in poverty.
I went to have a treatment which probably most people couldn't afford, most poor people couldn't afford. It doesn't matter what it is, but it's kind of a naturopathic thing. I've always paid $80. I only do this maybe twice a year. It was $100.
I know, yeah.
Hello.
Everything's increasing.
Yes.
On the 15, we say, look, Seattle's doing it, San Francisco's doing it.
Yes.
Huge portions of the hospitality sector, hotels with more than 150 rooms in LA are now paying over $15 an hour by requirement. And also, Monica mentioned this, if you work full-time at the minimum wage, you're thousands of dollars below the poverty line. So what that means is we talk about people being poor and this myth of welfare bums.
Yes.
These are people who are working working and
still
living
poor.
in poverty. And $15 an hour just lifts them a bit above the poverty line.
And what was the front page story of the Vancouver Sun today? Minimum $1 million for a home in any neighborhood in Vancouver.
In the most expensive province in Canada.
Yeah, we're talking about houses at 20th and Fraser, $1 million.
Absolutely.
Excuse me?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So raising the minimum wage is good for the economy too, because when you give someone $4.75 more, they actually don't sock that away. They don't buy stocks and bonds. They don't take that money offshore.
Yes.
They go to the grocery store and buy better food for their kids, right? They spend it at the community pool. They go to a movie once in a while because now they can afford to do something they couldn't afford to do before. So all of that money goes back into the economy. And there was actually a good study done by Jim Stanford and someone else whose name I've forgotten that showed that raising the minimum wage doesn't have an impact on employment. And it doesn't have a negative impact on the economy.
Well, I know that the Canadian Federation of Independent Businesses have other views on this.
They do.
And I'm sure the Board of Trade has other views on this, and a lot of well-heeled people have other views on this. We're going to take a little breather. When we come back, let's hash that out a bit. Okay, our guests are Irene Lanzinger from BC Federation of Labor and Monica Rosina from, I was going to say Action, from ACORN. We just take a breath here. And that's your opportunity to send us an email at davidberner.com and the chance for those lovely people who support us here to say hello on Shaw Community Television Cable 4. We'll be back. I just have to go to the ATM and get some cash. This program has been made possible in part by the following sponsors. The Trial Lawyers Association of BC. The Vancouver Courier newspaper. My new book about addictions, All the Way Home, Building Recovery That Works. Mary Ellen TURPEL-LAFOND, the BC Child Advocate, is the only person I've ever traveled out of this studio to interview. I went and interviewed her at her Shaw Studios in Victoria because she's such an extraordinary person and extraordinary power and a great advocate for us here in BC. And she continues to point out that even though the clawback has been clawed back, even though we're up to 10 1/4 in terms of a minimum wage, we still have amongst the worst rate of child poverty in Canada. Over 100,000 children
are living poor. How can that be in this extraordinarily beautiful place? By the way, I have to make a correction. Irene Lanzinger from BC Federation of Labor, I got that right. But Monica, I wrote down your email name somehow by mistake. Your real name is Monica McGovern.
Yes.
Okay. So, gentlemen, if you could fix that while we're talking for the super on the screen, I've been calling you Monica Rosina. I just assumed that was your last name, but it isn't. Monica McGovern.
Yes.
And are you related to Elizabeth McGovern, who's the star of Downton Abbey?
No, but everybody calls me Elizabeth McGovern.
Well, that's probably why. And don't you wish you lived in Downton Abbey?
I do.
Yeah.
Though not as a servant.
No, not as a servant.
Is she a servant? I don't watch it. No, I think she's part of the aristocracy.
Good.
So, which is funny because she's an American. There are a number of Americans said, did you see that what's her face said she's going to retire? Maggie says she's going to retire.
Oh.
My goodness. Well, she's only 80.
Yeah. Okay,
let's get back to these struggles. So what do you say to the Canadian Federation of Independent Business or to the Board of Trade who say, you know, they do their Chicken Little thing. They say, oh, $15 minimum wage, the world's going to come to a halt.
Well, it's not, and it hasn't.
Yes.
And it's not coming to a halt in Seattle,
yes,
where they're raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour. And it didn't, employment numbers went up when we raised the minimum wage from $8 an hour to $10.25 an hour. Yes. We actually had higher rates of employment after that move.
What do we do, if anything, about a thing that has annoyed me and irked me for many years, and that is people who work, for example, in the restaurant business and in the hospitality industry, but in many activities. We're doing it now at radio stations and television stations, where kids are always hired only part-time, so that nobody has to pay benefits. Okay, and so many perfectly good operations have done well, largely because they're getting really cheap labor.
Yeah. Well, they do well in one sense,
yes,
but they aren't good for society.
Why do you say that?
You're keeping people living in poverty, paying them poverty wages, and not even giving them full-time work at those wages. And that has a long-term cost in terms of education, in terms of health care, in terms of people who, you know, end up on the streets because they can't make a living. So poverty has a long-term cost for society. And it may be that, and you know, many of these companies paying minimum wage are big companies.
Yes.
They're either paying minimum wage or slightly above. 47% of minimum wage workers work for companies that employ more than 500 people. So it's not all, in fact, small businesses. We had a small business owner at our rally. I talked to another one yesterday. They say, we want to pay more than the minimum wage, and we do, but that means we have to compete with these big companies paying the minimum wage.
The fast food, I think of the fast food and caffeine industries, you know, I don't want to name all the obvious names, but it seems to me that all of the baristas, you know, are college kids or people who are retired or say, you know, and that's minimum wage, I'm assuming.
Yes. Though many,
please, Monica.
I think we're forgetting too is if you're in the service industry, they don't pay you $10.25. They pay you $9 an hour.
Excuse me?
Yes. Server wage. That's the server wage. Not everybody gets $10.25.
Ah, okay.
There's a lower wage.
So that's even more difficult.
Yes, and we've called for the elimination of the server wage.
Yeah. What other, I know that you folks are working in concert on a number of projects. So Monica, let's just start with you. Now that ACORN has successfully clawed back the clawback, what's at the top of your agenda now?
Well, we're going to keep pushing to raise the rates.
Okay.
But we're working on, right now we're working on anti-gentrification. Because I'm Burnaby. Burnaby they're tearing down a lot of the low-income housing or the affordable housing.
Yes.
And they're putting up, you know, huge
towers.
skyscrapers.
Yes.
And they're not replacing that housing. So what's happening is people are, who's really affected is the families with kids in schools and community ties, with the seniors who are used to their area and their services.
Yes.
And with the new immigrants, they're all being hit really hard, and that they can no longer afford to live in the neighborhoods that maybe their kids have grown up with or they've been used. There's no plan, no comprehensive plan by either government, federal or provincial, to build more affordable housing, to replace what's being torn down, which I think has, in some areas of the world or like in the States, they have been able to do that, some of that, because they've had more vocal, even Vancouver has more vocal housing advocates. And we're just starting this, in Burnaby and other areas.
What's the update on the 37th and Main project that was low-income housing for 50 years, and then everybody sort of got the boot and they're tearing it down? Do you have an update on that? Do we know where they're going?
I do not know that.
As far as I know, they had a plan. Is that the one where they were going to build high density?
Yes, yeah.
But the owner had some other property where he was going to build 172 units of
trade-off,
low income.
Yeah.
But that wasn't approved, so I don't know what's happening with that.
Okay. So you're taking a deep breath on that.
Well, I think these things all fit together into a poverty reduction plan, which we are now the only province in Canada that does not have a poverty reduction plan.
Yes.
And there are generally 3 pieces to a poverty reduction plan.
Yes.
Raising the minimum wage, raising social assistance rates, which Monica's talked about, and social housing. Mm-hmm. Those are the sort of basic pillars of a poverty reduction plan. And so, we talk about the minimum wage a lot. We have a campaign. ACORN and other groups work on raising welfare rates. We have all of these issues around social housing, but we need the provincial government to take leadership and set in place a poverty reduction plan that includes all these elements.
Unless I've missed something, it seems to me that we've done a pretty good job, a reasonably good job in Canada, not everywhere, but generally in Canada, at not creating public housing like London Council flats that turn into impoverished places that are run down and that are the seeds of criminality and drug use and so on. We seem to have done, I don't see a lot of that in the Lower Mainland, for example. It may be in the north of Toronto in some areas, but I don't see it so much here. Am I wrong, Monica?
I'm just thinking for Burnaby, a lot of our residents are, say, in the towers near Highgate and BC Housing Buildings, and they're raising so many problems in there, like with rodents, with cockroaches, with broken things, fire escapes.
Really?
And the government, the BC Housing, is not repairing them. So right now, and the older they get, we're having more and more problems with these places not being maintained.
Do we do a thing in this province where we award the good landlord? Do we have such a thing where we have the golden key for the good landlord? I just made that up. Is there such a thing as a good landlord? I hope so.
Well, that's the other thing is we've been fighting, particularly in Burnaby, to get a family maintenance, a housing maintenance plan where the province will oversee when we get these complaints come in about inadequate housing and things. Vancouver has a plan, New West has a plan, Surrey, but they're all different. Burnaby Council's view is that the provincial government should step in and have a across-the-board provincial plan of maintenance, because what happens here is we have seen big landlords being taken and fined when they go to the landlord tenancy branch. They can order a landlord to fix something, but there's no teeth in the act for them to collect the money from them, and we've seen the big landlords get away with it.
The oldest game in the book is municipal and provincial and federal governments all pointing the finger. Yeah, it's you do it, you do it, you do it. What if Corrigan just went and did it? What if Burnaby just did it? You know,
that would be nice.
Yeah, that would be nice. Irene, we're almost out of time. Give us. You made up a short list for yourself that you made public of things you want to get done. So minimum wage. You want more unionized workers?
Absolutely.
Is it possible?
Yes, I think it's possible. I mean, we have both provincial and federal governments that have put rules in place that make it difficult to unionize.
Yes.
So it's hard to organize, harder than it was in the 90s, but we're going to work on that. We're going to run some institutes and trainings and talk to our affiliates about it and support them every way we can, because that actually closes the wage gap and raises people up to higher wages and benefits and brings people out of poverty when we unionize more workers.
I liked what you said about other provinces having a poverty plan. What would we need to do that?
We would need the government.
Which government?
Provincial.
Yes.
These are usually provincial. Saskatchewan just put one in place. They were the last province to do it, except for us.
And for example, does the Saskatchewan program look viable? Does it look like it's something that could be pulled off?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there's really, as I said, 3 pieces to it.
Yeah.
Raising the minimum wage, raising welfare rates, and putting a plan for social housing. And you know, Newfoundland did it with a conservative government, right?
Yes.
And their poverty rate is way lower than ours. So, and you know, there's a stat that always astounds me.
Yes.
If you are the child of a single mother in this province, you have a 50% chance of growing up in poverty.
Yes, you are in poverty.
And why would we let that happen in a wealthy and beautiful province like ours?
We shouldn't. Ladies, thank you so much. We're out of time. It's just great to have you here.
Okay. Can I just quickly get in? The Poverty Reduction Coalition in BC, they're working on that. Like ACORN's a member of that coalition.
Absolutely.
That we're pushing to get a poverty reduction plan in place in BC.
Fantastic. And Monica, it's great to see that you've been able to coalesce and pull people together and get them out door knocking and getting on the phone and going to action, because if you just sit there, nothing's going to happen.
Nothing would happen.
So good citizen action stuff. Thank you. Thank you both.
David.
It's marvelous. Keep up the good work. So that's it for us, folks. Next week, Gwen Barley, who's a policy director with the Wilderness Committee, is going to be on the show, and we're going to talk about why are we spending so much money on advertising beautiful BC and less and less and less money on maintaining parks. Should we keep the parks going if we're going to invite everybody to come here? Thanks for being with us here today on Shaw Community Television, Cable 4. Good night.